Kartik, Chris, and I are here for Beyond the 90. We've got 3 more listener mailbag videos to come. We're going to have one on how promotion and relegation should be implemented in USL, responding to your questions on that. Now, I should note that we're doing a whole series on promotion and relegation, but that's promotion and relegation in general. We're going to do one on the competition between USL League Two, League for Clubs, and PSL, and where that stands. And I've owed you guys an update on that. So I haven't made, I think I made a video maybe the first day of the USL Championship in League One season about that, and have not updated y'all on it since. So that's my fault. Should be keeping, because that's fluid, right? And there are lots of balls in the air, so to speak, on that. And today we're going to do one on President Donald Trump, his immigration policy, and his tariffs, and how we're finding it's affecting soccer. Now, I also had a question via private message that was not put in the mailbag, but by a subscriber, paid subscriber. So we're going to let go about how it's going to affect travel to the World Cup. I think that's a little, so I'll just answer that real quickly, because that's less of a complex issue than what the other things we're going to deal with, which is about investment, which is about immigration. I was hearing even before Trump was elected that people were concerned about the lack of mass transit in U.S. cities, and that they were not that they're used to going to World Cup venues where transportation's a little better. There's urban rail, which there was in Russia, as bad as malign a country as Russia is, which there was in Russia. Brazil, not so much, but that there was concerns from Europeans mostly about the cost of Ubering around in some of the American cities. So I think based on that, you might see those places where mass transit connects to a stadium, like in Atlanta, like in, where else is a host venue in the U.S.? Toronto, in the U.S., sorry. That where it's close to, where there's mass transit connecting to the venue, you will see, I think, the normal amount of fans. You had people go to Russia, you had people go to Qatar, you had people go to Brazil, which is a very unsafe country by the standard of the sorts of places that normally host World Cups. You had people go to South Africa. So I don't think it's as big a drawback as, I don't think the politics is the drawback. I think what I was hearing even before Trump was elected was about mass transit and the cost of Ubering around and taking taxis and Ubers in the United States, and the distance from the city centers and where the major hotels were of some of these stadium venues. So the ones that I heard particular concern about were Dallas and Miami. So I think it might affect those two venues in particular, because of the distance between some of the major hotels and attractions and those stadiums. Okay, so that's out of the way. I don't think that's as big a deal, at least at this moment. Now, what is a big deal? What is a really big deal? And let's get into your questions, because you guys have asked the questions. I'm just answering them. I do have a specific question about Trump. It seems from rumors like there have been delays in processing immigration work visas for multiple clubs in the USL Championship. Is this true? Yes, it's true. I don't want to get into specifics. Yes, it's true. And it's affecting roster builds for some clubs. Second part of this person's question was, how will USL clubs plan for the future with this difficulty with immigration? Could it slow the growth of the pyramid? Yeah, it could. I mean, I think it may give more American players and green card holders opportunities. It also, realistically, I think what you might see is USL teams and MLS teams plan better. Not say, okay, season starts February 28th, March 1st, whatever. We're going to try and get this guy from Argentina or from Colombia in January. No, they're going to actually put in their immigration attorneys are going to be working on it in October and November and getting it done. They're going to build in more time. So I think that's what's going to happen. Kartik, I recognize that you want to avoid politics on here, blah, 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 blah. I'm here. I'm going to ask you a direct question. How is Trump? Okay, we've already answered this. Also, this is about the 2026 World Cup. Also, how much is Trump impacting foreign investment in USL? Okay, that's it. That's the big thing right now. So let me explain something. I'm finding, and this is where my political ideology is going to come in here. I'm a free trader. I historically was a member of the Democratic Party, was an active member of the Democratic Party, but was constantly butting heads with the leaders of that party on this specific issue, which is free trade. I'm a free trader. I'm a free market guy. I'm into environmental issues. There are other reasons why I was a Democrat. And when I grew up, the Democrats were the party of the working class. And I fancy myself as a working class guy, kind of a populist champion. But I butted heads with the Democrats on this issue more than any other issue. This is the issue where I said, you know what, I might just become a Republican. And talked about becoming a Republican because of this issue. Now, of course, I will go nowhere near the Republican Party because of this issue. So that's my personal ideology. The Republican Party has now become the heavy tariff, heavy protectionist, anti-free trade party. Not that the Democrats are a free trade party. They're not. They're just not as bad, right? I still think they're bad on trade. I still think they're bad on foreign investment. Still think they're bad on the free market. I just think the Republicans have proven to be a whole lot worse on it. So that's my ideology. I think both parties are really kind of economically illiterate on this issue. So how does it affect soccer specifically and USL? Let me explain this. Trade deficits are largely built up, which I think our president doesn't quite comprehend, or the people around him don't quite comprehend, because foreign investors, foreign countries, people in foreign countries, it isn't just the governments, are investing in your country. And that's a net positive for our consumers. That's a net positive in terms of innovation. That's a net positive in terms of competition in the marketplace. That's a net positive when it comes to this sport, and you're able to get foreign investment. We don't have restrictions in our pro league standards on foreign investment the way in Germany, every club has to be 50+1, for example. There are other leagues that have, other league systems that have restrictions on foreign investment. We've never had that. To MLS's credit, I criticize MLS a lot. They've never had that restriction. To USL's credit, USL has never had that restriction. USL has had a lot of foreign investment come in, and they were poised to get a lot more. A lot more. Some of the discussions I've heard in the last 2 years, if USL goes pro rel, if USL brings in, has a D1, if USL can get over the line with some of these sponsorships, then this is going to be great. There's going to be this much more investment. So, as I said in a video earlier in the week, 80% of the conversations I'm having now about business and about clubs in USL, it's not just business and finance, it's technical stuff, it's football, soccer related stuff. This issue is coming up. One thing is for sure, we don't know if it's definitive. We don't know, because also the thing is, President Trump needs to change his mind on stuff a lot. He doesn't have this is what happens when you don't have a consistent philosophy or ideology. You put the tariffs on one day, the next day you're suspending them. The next day you're saying, oh, I'm only doing it on these products. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but uncertainty leads investors to hold their money. This is tried and true. It's not a political or ideological statement. That's reality. And that's what I sense is happening. We have investors who are concerned about the uncertainty. They're concerned about the restrictions that might be put on business. They're concerned about the potential of business in the U.S. market. They're concerned about the ability of consumers to spend on tickets. And because let's face it, going to a football match, sponsoring a football, if you're a company sponsoring a football club, all of this stuff is kind of extraneous spending. It's an extraneous consumption if you have to tighten your belt as a family, if you have to tighten your belt as a company. So it's leading to uncertainty. It's leading to people saying, they're not saying, no, we're not going to invest in USL. No, we're not going to buy this club. No, we're not going to buy 20% of this club. We're not going to get involved with this youth system. But it is leading them to say, you know what? In April 2025, we got to wait. June, July, maybe there's more clarity. So it's having the that kind of direct effect, which is I think quite unfortunate, and I do think this is bad. This is just bad in general. Um, Kevin Alexander, who by the way has one of the best, if you're into music, and I'm talking about going back to the 50s and 60s, and like me, well, he's worked in the airline industry. I've worked as a consultant on the kind of on the outside, the periphery of the airline industry. Kevin Alexander on Repeat Records. I recommend that Substack. Kevin is asking, how, if at all, do you see the latest political chaos in the U.S. affecting leagues either here or abroad? I'm thinking of things like merch sales, club tours, or even of the U.S., even transfers. It's going to affect all those things. Now, the one positive thing I can say from President Trump's policies is because the dollar is going to be devalued. That's pretty clear that Trump doesn't like what Fed Chair Jerome Powell is doing. I'm a supporter of Powell's. So no, again, I'm getting my ideology in here a little bit, but I think that the dollar is going to weaken. So that might allow foreign clubs to tour the United States a little more easily, assuming all their players can get visas. Now, what I think is negative from what Kevin's asking is merch sales are going to be affected. Merchandise itself is being affected. I know we had a question about Charlie. I guess we'll get to that question, but let me just answer it now. We don't have to get to the questions specifically. Charlie, of course, is a Mexican company. I have heard from multiple USL clubs that there's slight disruptions in supply chain because of the tariffs and Mexico. So that's affecting, and we know a number of clubs in the league: Pittsburgh, Oakland, San Antonio, Tampa Bay, North Carolina. There are a few others, right, that have Charlie. They do great stuff, right? They do. If I were running a club, I'd go with them over Nike or Under Armour, over the American equivalents for sure. So I like the stuff they do, but yeah, there are disruptions there. And then think about the Pumas. Although a lot of this stuff is warehoused in the U.S. already. A lot of Puma stuff is warehoused. Adidas, and then also some of the other companies. Macron comes from Italy. There's a little bit of a delay in their shipments potentially. So that's an issue. Transfers, yeah, I think it's going to definitely affect the transfer market if this chaos continues into the window, into the summer window, and then into the winter window. Now, here's the thing. I just mentioned the airline industry. I follow the airline industry pretty closely, very closely, actually, I should say. There are flights from the U.S. to Europe that are being pulled down. Demand is not there. So you see airlines pulling a lot of their capacity both ways. U.S. airlines, United and Delta. I haven't seen any cuts from American yet. United and Delta cutting their capacity that way. Several European airlines cutting their capacity coming the other way from Europe to the U.S. Canadian Airlines, lot of cuts, particularly to Florida. My airport is Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International, where you have 6 different airlines. There are more airlines flying Fort Lauderdale to Toronto, Pearson, than Fort Lauderdale to any domestic destination in the U.S. More separate airlines. I'm not saying there are more flights. There are more flights to Atlanta than anywhere else, logically. But there are more individual airlines flying Fort Lauderdale, Pearson, Toronto, Pearson, than any other airport. A lot of those flights are being pulled down. Fort Lauderdale, Ottawa, a bunch of flights have been pulled down. Fort Lauderdale, Halifax has been canceled for the summer. Fort Lauderdale, Calgary is down to once a week. Fort Lauderdale, Winnipeg, Vancouver pulled down for the next several months. Fort Lauderdale, Kitchener, Waterloo just got suspended last week on flare. So and then the Montreal flights are being, there's still a large volume of Montreal flights, but pulled down slightly. Quebec City also. Some of it is seasonal, but much of it is due to the politics. Much of it had been loaded into the summer IATA schedule and then pulled out. If you know the airline industry, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, maybe I'm speaking in Greek about the IATA summer schedule. So a lot of these flights have been pulled in. And U.S. Europe, that's the busy season, and we're seeing pull downs. So the airline industry gives us a bit of a clue. Okay, do you think the threatened tariffs, political turmoil will hinder investment into soccer clubs, hinder or help investment into soccer clubs in the U.S.? One could see that there might be less capital coming from overseas, we've talked about. But alternatively, inflation could mean more attraction to the very affordable USL games instead of the expensive NFL or NBA options, and not having to travel internationally. That's an interesting one. I could see that, but we also may face stagflation at some point because that's what tariffs do. I've done a whole series for another media outlet about tariffs and what they do economically. And it's a lot of economic theory, but practice in the past. It may be like, again, speaking Greek to a lot of y'all. But we're getting inflation now, but we could get stagflation, and that would be disastrous. That's what protectionism does. I mean, the only positive for me in all of this is maybe just when I'm having the argument over coffee at the coffee house with someone who disagrees with me on free trade and free markets. In a couple of years, the argument may not be had because I would have won the argument. That's at least the way I'm thinking, but that's not good. That's a little personal vanity thing. Who cares? This is really, I think, bad for most people. There is the one positive, which is, I think international clubs, if they can get their visas, can tour the U.S. more easily because of a weaker dollar. Okay. More political questions, but they're all along the same lines. Okay, so we're done with that. We are going to do promotion and relegation in USL, and then the long overdue video on the adult amateur leagues and the tier 4 national leagues and where everything's falling out in the next few days. I can't promise it'll be tomorrow or the next day, but in the next several days. Jägermeister Cup weekend, so that changes a little bit of our coverage here at Beyond the 90. But still, obviously, we covered the Jägermeister Cup. It's just different than covering USL League One or the USL Championship.